You are listening to the Two and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
Grab some poutine and a double-double. It's time for the Two and Out CFL podcast.
He's got it! Oh, baby!
Every week, Travis Currah.
That's Grey Cup me, which is a different person.
And Brazilian Tide.
Hunters are people too.
Talk fantasy football, bring you the latest in CFL news, and sprinkle in a little bit of nonsense.
Oh, nearly intercepted, and it's over!
Ready, set, hunt!
And it's Travis Currah, Sheldon Jones, the Two and Out CFL podcast as we wrap up semi-final weekend in the Canadian Football League. It starts with the Montreal Alouettes handling business against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. 27-12, the final score. So much to talk about in this game. But I guess we'll start with the Hamilton quarterback situation. Matthew Shiltz gets the start right from the beginning for the Ticats. I kind of thought it was going to be the other way around. Bo starts and whatever happens, whether they want to change a pace or it's not going the way they want it to go, they'll switch the quarterbacks. How did you feel at the beginning here when Shiltz got the start?
Well, I'm kind of torn. I get it that maybe they think Montreal would have game planned for Bo more and so that they could throw that in there, but I'm with you. Like, I think it should have been Bo. I think his comments after the game kind of like put kind of everything into perspective a little bit. Like, Bo has the playoff experience. He's been there. He knows what it takes. And Shiltz, this is his first time, right? So, interesting choice. It didn't work out for them. I think, as we'll discuss later on, I think they waited a little bit too long to make a change. Quite too long. But that's probably why there's going to be 2 head coach vacancies pretty quickly here in the CFL.
He didn't have the best game, Shiltz. 13-23, 144 yards, an interception. He also added 34 yards on 4 carries on the ground. Now, not all of the struggles are his fault, to be clear. And hey, credit to the guys that are playing defense for the Alouettes because they had a good game here. The Cats were actually moving the ball early, and they were doing well, even on that first possession. But Keandre Smith has a very costly fumble, and the Ticats ended up losing the turnover battle, and that is just way more magnified in the playoffs. There were 2 interceptions and a fumble lost for the Ticats, but they hung around a little bit here, and I felt that they were mixing up the running game early. Tyreek McAllister getting the ball. Shiltz was moving the ball. Although Butler up the middle, it took them a while to get that going. In the first half, it wasn't having the most success. But Tyreek McAllister only got the 1 carry for 7 yards. James Butler ended with a pretty nice day, 13 carries, 83 yards. So he had over 6 yards a carry. That's pretty good. But I found early on they had, a nice drive where McAllister got a carry, Butler got a carry, Shiltz got a carry, and they just didn't stick with that, Sheldon.
No, and then you saw at halftime that Coach O said that they needed to go back to that, and they didn't. Still, that's playoff football. You have to be able to pound the ball. You have to be able to set up play action. Look. We'll talk about later, but look what happened in the first play of the second game with what play action just looks like, right? So it's huge. And Butler, he had his bright spots this season, and this was just a game where he needed to be a lot brighter.
Well, and he was the focal point of the offense, right? And look, 13 carries is a pretty good day at the office. You probably would have liked to have seen it closer to 20. At least I think. And he only had 2 catches. Butler can be pretty dangerous in the receiving game. But also Tim White. 3 targets, 0 catches for number 12 for the Ticats. Look, if Tim White's not going, The Ticats aren't going anywhere
Yeah.
because, after Labor Day, they started to get a little bit more momentum, getting White the ball more and more and more. And Montreal had all the answers for that here.
Yeah, I Montreal came to play, and it just didn't really seem. I think after that fumble, the
Yeah.
first drive, it just kind of, I think it deflated the Ticats, and I think that just stuck with them until they started getting going again, and then another interception.
Yeah.
It's just they were very costly, those two drives, because they were drives that they actually looked like they were moving the ball.
James Letcher early in the game and, throughout the night was keeping Montreal in pretty good field position. He had 5 punt returns for 73 yards, including that 25-yarder earlier in the game. Montreal turned it into a field goal. They had a 4-3 lead early on, but it was kind of one of those games that we've seen from Montreal. It's not really that fancy, but they don't turn the ball over. And Fajardo did have an interception, but it was one of those where it's like on the opposition's 5-yard line. So if they're going to take advantage of it, they got to go over 100 yards kind of thing. But he had 2 touchdowns, 15 to 23, 212. It's not a sexy stat line by any means, but where he was really dangerous was 62 yards rushing on 4 carries. Anytime Cody decided to take off, Hamilton, they weren't ready for it.
What did that remind you of?
I'll be
2013 Darian Durant playing BC. Fajardo he hasn't been running as much. Durant wasn't running as much. He just took the game into his legs, and he got those hard first downs when he needed it. And that, when the first time I was like, okay. And then once it got to like the third or fourth time that he just, they weren't designed runs. He just saw an opening and went, right? So it just kind of reminded me a lot of Derry and how he toughed out and got those big first downs in the third and fourth quarter against the BC Lions that year in the semifinals as well.
Darian came to mind to me when I was watching BC Calgary. Now, just because BC smashed Calgary, we'll get to the game, but just the way the talk and the chatter has been surrounding VA. Oh, he's done. He can't win the big one.
Which one's going to show up?
Yeah. So, there's some strange, we'll see. Either of these guys, they could meet in the Grey Cup. They've got a lot of momentum after winning the semifinal. If they start fast and maintain that in the division finals, both teams got a chance here. It was 7-6 Montreal with like 4:45 to go in the first half. So there was a lot of runs and it was a clean game. There wasn't penalties until the end. Which
we'll talk about that.
It's too bad. It kind of overshadows the game. But there was a big moment at the end of the first half where Stavros Katsantonis lays into Austin Mack. And Mack, he had a little bit of spaghetti legs walking off the field, and this could have gone either way. It could have been momentum in Hamilton's favor or in Montreal's favor. You get up, you want to answer back those big hits and show that defense you're not going anywhere, and that's the direction it went because Schultz gets picked off deep in his own end. At the end of the first half, it's Darnell Sankey off of the deflection. And then, like the next play, Austin Mack's back onto the field. He scores a touchdown. It's 14-6 Montreal with 44 seconds to go in the first half. What a momentum swing. And just a dagger giving up that late score at the end of that half.
As a Rider fan, it reminded me of quite a few games down the stretch of something happening right before the half. But yeah, no, that's... And for that to happen at home, you get to build off the crowd energy that happens when you get that interception deep in your own in the zone. And so kudos to Sankey getting that ball. And it's as somebody who had no skin in the game watching it, it's amazing to see the momentum take over like that. And that's basically where the game kind of left after that. It just seemed, again, Hamilton was super deflated, and you lose all that possible momentum of being only down 1 point going into half, and then now you're down 8 points, just like that.
And what a year for Austin Mack, a rookie season in the CFL. He only had 3 catches for 46 yards in this one, but obviously that touchdown at the end of the half, I guess it ended up being the game winner. Hamilton didn't score any more than 14, so that was obviously a big score. Now, after halftime, Montreal continued to chip away. They start the second half with a field goal, and this is when I started to watch Hamilton and wonder, when's Bo gonna get in?
Yeah.
When is he gonna get in there and spark the Ticat offense? And it just didn't happen. But it was, and I'm trying to think, like, when would have been the proper time? That after Montreal gets that field goal to open up the half, Hamilton has a big play to Omar Bayless. He makes a great catch, and they get a field goal of their own. So it's only 17-12. They had opportunities here. There were 17-9 at that point. But Schultz gets in there, and I think Montreal's defense really turned it on. They started pressuring him, and he wasn't getting much done. I feel like if Hamilton was going to make this decision, they had to do it quickly. After maybe one series where it seems like Schultz isn't seeing it, and really, they weren't scoring sixes. They were scoring threes. They just needed to do anything to finish a drive, and who knows if Bo would have been able to do it. But I guess that's the question that is going to be lingering over this game and the end of this season for the next 6 months in Hamilton.
Like when you put a quarterback in, there's obviously that chance of like just a really quick momentum change, but they also need time to get into the game zone, I feel. And so if you wait till 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter,
that's not a good spot.
That's like mop-up time. That's like, we already know that this game's over. Get in there, and we don't want any injuries at our quarterback. What does it like? So he needed to go in, if not right at halftime, like middle of the third quarter. That's the time that you got to put him in. And so I'm questioning why Steinhauer didn't want to put him in there, why Milanovic didn't want him in there. Like, it's very interesting. Very interesting. Because
it was in the fourth quarter, Hamilton ended up having a pretty nice drive. They had a 14-play, 65-yard drive, and the big moment here was 2nd and 10 on the Montreal 28. Darnell Sankey sacks Schultz, so they had to kick a field goal on 3rd and 21. So now they're down 5, and I think maybe that is the moment where you put Bo out for the next drive.
Yeah.
But Montreal, the drive that they had following that almost made it a moot point a little bit. They go 7 plays, 70 yards to score a touchdown. So I think that one was another dagger score against the Ticats. Like, they pull in within kind of one score and they got a chance, and then the Als just shove it down their throat. And I guess a shout out to Jake Hardy, who had 6 catches all year. And he's the one that scored the touchdown to put the Als up 23-12 before the point after. And Jake Hardy has been a guy that has battled through a lot, battled through injury issues. So 3 catches, 31 yards, a touchdown in this game. Good for him. I mean, he's involved in the situation at the end of the game as well. But Jason Moss pulling out some tricks out of the hat, including a big 21-yard play to the fullback, James Tuck, and obviously Jake Hardy with a crucial touchdown to kind of take any wind out of Hamilton's sails there.
Yeah, and I think you actually called that last show when you said playoffs is the time when usually there's a receiver who comes out of nowhere and does something spectacular, right? So yeah. So good on you for that one. And Yeah, it's actually good to see Jake Hardy because he had a really rough time when he was in Saskatchewan here, and we didn't really actually get to see what he could really do because of all the injuries, right? So good to see him have that. They he's one of those older. He's kind of like the older veteran Canadian,
Yeah.
the raw bag type on the team there. So it's good for him to get in there and get a touchdown. I'm sure he's been waiting a long time for that feeling.
So
He's throwing out the bird. That was that was awesome.
so then it was that moment after that Jake Hardy touchdown that Bo ends up coming into the game. But at this point, they're down 12, 6.5 minutes to go. And I thought Bo actually had a really good throw to Omar Bayless. But I guess an even better play by Marc-Antoine Dequoy to break that up. In the playoffs, I think the receivers got to make the play. It obviously it wasn't an easy play to make, so credit to the Als defense for breaking that up. But Bo, he got the ball to the right place. I guess you could argue maybe shouldn't have thrown with two defenders that had a shot at breaking up the ball there. But hey, you want to talk about clairvoyance? What about Sean Lemon, who was asked before the game, how are you game planning for both of these guys? Well,
Brought his shot.
I'm going to sack both of them. He sacks Schultz. Then after that play to Omar Bayless gets broken up, Sean Lemon, the big sack, forcing obviously like 3rd and 23 for the Ticats and a punt. What a clutch sack by number 0. But I think they only rushed 3. So there were some offensive line issues in Hamilton too, that when they send 3 guys, Bo didn't have much time. It's not like he was back there for 7 seconds looking for a receiver. He didn't have time to get set at all.
Yeah, I think he got a rough break there. Like it was tough for him to get in any momentum. And even that the next series when he threw the pick, like he put the ball in the right spot. Like it was right where the receiver should have been able to get it. So I know a lot of people are down on Bo, and I think a lot of people think that this cements that he's done, and that sucks because Bo is like one of the last elite quarterbacks we've had in this league for a while. Like him, Riley.
And then the next step is probably Trevor Harris, really.
Yeah, and
of that generation.
Yeah. And it's just I hate seeing elite quarterbacks going out in less than elite ways. I sent a post or X, whatever you want to call it, saying that earlier because I hated Bo as a player. I hated him until that first CFL week we had in Regina when I got to find out what Bo the person was, because
he's
they had
a great
panel.
guy to talk to, man.
Great guy. They had a panel with, it was him, it was Matt Nichols, and it was Riley. They were the 3 quarterbacks were there, and you just found out that they're just regular dudes. And I know I knew that, but it humanized this guy that I thought was just a cocky piece of whenever he played the Riders, right? And
I used to think that of Bo too.
Yeah, but and then there was, I'll admit it, I was one of the people who did want to see the Riders land him because I thought that coming here might have lit a fire under his ass, and I don't know, but it sucks because I think this is it for him, and it sucks.
You think that's the end of his career?
Well, I just look on the landscape and what teams will be looking for a quarterback next year, because I don't think he's the type of guy who's gonna be that veteran backup when he can just go be on the CFL panel tomorrow, and he's done it in the past Grey Cups and he's been awesome on the Grey Cup week. So I think that's his next step in his career. Why not just go there now? Because unless he's going to go to Ottawa, that's really the only other team. Like,
it's funny, Calgary should have him back.
Well, I was gonna say, like, maybe Dave realizes that Mayer wasn't the guy and gives Bo another chance in Calgary, but that would be quite funny, seeing all the Calgary fans have to change their tunes on him like that again. But it sucks. It's kind of like the way Matt Nichols went out a little bit too, and Matt Nichols wasn't elite. He was just a game manager quarterback, but I like to see guys go out on top, like Hank and like Riley kind of. And like it just I guess no, he didn't really go out on top
No,
either. Yeah.
he went out getting the crap beat out of him the final 2 seasons. And look, man, not every actually
Very
98% of
few.
careers
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
sad ending.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to remind you of Ricky Ray's last time on a football field when it could have ended in the 105th Grey Cup beating Calgary in the snow in Ottawa.
Yeah.
But he came back and damn, like it's sad. It's tough to see that, and that's kind of recent Canadian football history. And
Yeah.
credit to
And
Bo, the
yeah.
way he handled last year, ending that season on the bench,
Mhm.
and this year 2 stints on the 6-game injured list, and then doesn't start the playoff game. He tried to handle, and I think he did handle that locker room interview with grace, but
But
then
blunt. He was blunt.
he basically said, if you're not going to be starting your highest paid player in the playoff game, I don't foresee myself being here. And that's what Bo said. I don't know if he's done in the CFL. That's weird to say, man. It's weird. He's
the winningest quarterback in CFL history.
But a lot of injury problems, and they're adding up, and that doesn't help, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it was weird. Like, he was on such a pace. Like, we're getting to the age where this podcast is almost as old as some careers in the league, So Bo was only in the league for a season or two when 2 and Out started, and he was on such a pace where he was just winning every game, and that winning percentage to start his career was incredible. And then the last couple of years, it's tough, and Hamilton's got a lot of questions to answer here. And at the end of the game, after the Lemon sack, it was really William Stanback, the closer, comes in, and it was like the Cats were done. They had no answer. Stanback, a 38-yard run, then a 10-yard run, and then he gets a 1-yard run, but then Cody Fajardo runs for 11 yards. And Stanback ended up adding another 8 yards that drive before they kick another field goal to take that 27-12 lead that would be the end of the game. Bo comes in, gets intercepted by Marc-Antoine Dequoy, and then Montreal gets the ball again, 48 seconds to go, and this is when we have the incident. It was strange watching it on TV because I thought it was Philpott that started. Like, if you watch where the ball went, he ends up shoving a guy, and then the next camera shot is the benches in a melee. But then they zoom out to the wide shot, and I've watched this play lots since the game happened. When it happened, I was all like, well, Chris Edwards did get egged on a bit. It looks like Hardy grabs his face mask a little bit, and then Edwards kind of snaps. Like, really, he took it too far.
That's a shocker.
And clearly, when he's losing and he's about to get eliminated from the playoffs, he took it way too far, man. He wrestled him to the ground, and then it did look like he threw a punch as well on the wide shot. And then
he didn't wrestle him to the ground. He threw him to the ground by his face mask.
And then, of course, the bench is clear, and we have a melee there. It's just with Edwards. It's not the first, the second, or the third time, man. It's happening far too often. And this is actually something I think that was a concern with the Ticats to start the season. Getting Edwards, Duke Williams, all these guys into the same room And I guess Edwards was the last one on the field in the playoff game, and that's what happened, Sheldon.
Yeah, I don't want to steal Coach Phil's gimmick, so I won't. But like I was pretty hot when I saw that. Like it pisses me off when I see players taking liberties like that, because again, it's not the first time. And I know I've come on here saying that Micah Alway is dirty, and he's not a dirty player, but he makes dirty hits. But at least when Micah Alway makes those dirty hits, it's between the whistles.
That's fair.
At least when Big Hill launches himself like Ralph Wiggum through the Simpsons front window, it's during a play.
Yeah.
And this is outside of the play, and he needs to be suspended for the start of next season if a team is going to give him another chance, but it has to be a major suspension. None of this one game. It needs to be, 3-4 games to send a message saying that this isn't acceptable. And I also want to say I 100% agree with what the TSN cameras caught Jason Moss saying to the official.
Can I say that was some great just broadcasting, and
Yes.
just also some of the best footage I've seen during a football game, like ever.
Yes. Yeah. No, it was like you're watching like a live episode of Hard Knocks for like a little bit there, because they were so tight on it. And
I'm glad they didn't move after the F-bomb.
yeah, no, exactly.
They were like, okay, if he drops another one. But
there was a lot of F-bombs and a lot of
There
swearing
was.
caught on in these games, but
he's right. If that
100%.
causes any Alouette player to miss the East Final, whether it's by injury or by suspension,
Yeah.
that is brutal.
Because you see, and the one person that maybe it would is Antwi, because he's the one who he left the bench, which you can't do that. So you gotta fine him for that, but you don't suspend him given the circumstance, because all he was doing was going to stand up for his boy who just got thrown to the ground by his face mask by some dirty piece of who shouldn't be in the league anymore. There you go, Jock. You're getting the elk calls this week.
Yeah, I just watched the play again. Like,
and maybe Hardy is trying to get that out of Chris Edwards, because he knows that that's something that's going to happen, and that's fine. There's 40 seconds left in the game. There's really no need for that to happen.
He's done with it. Like the play, like once the play's done, Hardy looks like he wants to walk away.
Yeah, because you play to the whistle.
Yeah.
And it's just.
But earlier this year, Edwards pushed Austin. He goes to shake his hand.
Yeah.
With Austin Mack, and then push, like that was something straight out of Monday Night Raw, man. Like
he like open hand smacked him on the side of the face mask, right? Didn't he?
Like I think he just shoved him over, kind of.
Was it just shoving? Okay.
But what? So there's a history between Edwards and the Alouettes.
Yeah.
So
there's a history between Edwards and everyone.
Yeah.
Edwards and the Riders when he was with Toronto with him and Duke. And then there was another time, there was another game where he started crap against the Riders. I think it was like later in that season. Last season, he got ejected in a game of Mosaic, if I remember correctly. Like, it's just enough's enough. And you have to send a message to the players who came off the bench to say that you can't do that, but you also have to. Because there was also, I don't know if you saw this too, but one of the Montreal players got bumped into an official, and the official got knocked down too. So if they suspend the player for knocking down the official who got pushed into by somebody else, like that's again bull crap, right? Like the only person who should have been ejected from that game, in my opinion, was Edwards. Give penalties to everyone who came off the bench. Give fines to everyone who come off the bench, but. It's just
they have some hard decisions to make, and it's just a shame that this overshadows what the Alouettes did and achieved.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Man, I don't want to be in the league office for this decision. Like I do feel like if it was a regular season game, and I know that we want the games to be officiated the same in July as they are in November, but they never are. We know that.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what happens here. Maybe they just announce fines and we'll see what they say with Edwards here. But the bottom line is it just looks like Edwards being a bit of a baby after losing in the playoffs. His team scored no touchdowns. Bottom line, the Alouettes defense was all over the Ticats. And what happens with the Ticats? Coach O gone?
Has to be. In my opinion, he has to be. You had 2 chances at a home Grey Cup in 3 years. You got destroyed when you made it to the Grey Cup, and now you don't even make it to the second round. Yeah. It's no different than in other teams. Like I know I always come back to Riders because I'm a Rider fan, so I'm sorry about that, everybody. But it's no different than Craig Dickenson. He didn't improve. He steadily declined. So they chose not to keep him. So
2 straight Grey Cup appearances, and now it's regressed. So
yeah, and it's just. But the thing is, like, and I know I kind of have been wanting Milanovic to come to Saskatchewan, but at the same time, is Hamilton really going to want Milanovic now that, like, they didn't do anything offensively in this game? And they, like, so it'll be interesting to see. He does, I think, has 1 more year left on his deal. So if they don't get rid of this stupid cap penalties for the coach's cap, they're going to have to eat that salary.
Yeah, or like, is he going to do the whole lame duck thing like Saskatchewan did this year? I doubt that they'll do that, but I guess, there's not a nicer guy, I think, in the CFL than Bob Young with the Ticats. So I feel for him, I want to see Bob get his Grey Cup, but it's not happening this year as the Montreal Alouettes get set. Maybe they'll get the horn guy into BMO Field. What do you think? I think it's going to be a rocket atmosphere in Toronto.
I hope Toronto can sell it out. Like, I think last I saw it was at 21. 21.
Oh,
yeah.
22.
So,
good.
Yeah, I think it was 22. So, and guys, it's loud when there's only 15,000 people in there.
Those Argo fans are loud, man.
And they're banging on those metal seats and everything. So imagine what it's going to be like with 25, let's say, in there. It's going to, like, so even if the horn guy gets in there, maybe he'll be drowned out by the actual crowd. Who knows?
I think this is a massive game for the Argos franchise and the CFL. I think all the pressure's on Toronto. All of it.
Yeah. Because Montreal gets to go in there and just be the underdogs, and they get to be the world beaters and try to be the world beaters. Yeah. And everyone's been doubting them since the beginning of the season. I'm sure, like we did. We thought that they were going to be crappy because they were way behind on the 8 ball on free agency because of the ownership issue. Yeah. They lost Trevor Harris. He was going to resign, but he didn't because he didn't know what was going on.
Gino.
Winicky, who didn't do it all for us anyway. But they lost impact players. They got other teams perceived scraps like Cody Fajardo and a scapegoat, a scapegoat offensive coordinator, and Jason Moss, like, he should be winning Coach of the Year. I know Dinwiddie did great. I know O'Shea just did the status quo that O'Shea does, but Jason Moss, it's like the Vegas Golden Knights the first year of the extent. They were just a band of misfits who got together, bought into a system, made it to the Stanley Cup. So can Montreal do that this time? We'll see. That's called a tease for next show, boys.
The Alouettes sweep the Ticats. Man, the Ticats got swept by the Argos and the Alouettes in 2023. Whoa.
That's a lot of losses.
Yeah,
that's
probably
again,
75% of their losses.
The one thing we have to remember about Montreal, and then we can move on to the next game if you want. They are undefeated against teams with a lesser record than them, and they are winless against the teams better than them. So now it's what's going to happen.
They've been close to Toronto, so now they've got momentum and belief, I think. So we'll see. We'll talk about it next week. And now we're off to Vancouver. The BC Lions advanced to the West Final after beating the Calgary Stampeders 41-30. Now, I don't know. Does the score flatter Calgary? I don't think so. I think Calgary they had their opportunities here. Sheldon, what were you thinking? 3 minutes into the game, Jake Maier hits Bagleton, hits Mark and Michelle. It's 7-0 Stampeders early. They came out flying, man.
Yeah, no, that's what Calgary can do. I said it before, like they know they have a credible threat at running back in Kadeem Carey, and they're able to use play action without even running a play before that. So what my initial thoughts were, if BC doesn't match here, they're screwed. But they did.
And early they didn't match. Like Calgary actually had another opportunity because BC had an illegal punt.
Mm-hmm.
And the Stamps got the ball in good field position. But in the back half of the season, bounces like this did not go BC's way. If there was the ball hitting the DB in the hands, it was hitting the ground. Well, Gary Peters hung on to the ball, but maybe with a cost. Gary Peters runs into Ben Hladik, who had a great season as a Canadian linebacker, over 100 tackles on the year. Peters was down on the field as well, but it was that interception that really launched the Lions offense into high gear, because the Lions made Calgary pay for that mistake. And very quickly, it was 7-7 after the Lions go 75 yards on 9 plays and end in a Javon Catoy touchdown. Now, maybe we were reading too much into that, I guess, week 20 game between the Stamps and the Lions, because Calgary had a little bit of that same game plan where there were 3 or 4 guys rushing and the rest in coverage. But VA was on his game, and he picked it apart all night, Sheldon.
Yeah, big play VA came out to play. Everyone talks about how there's 2 different Vernon Adams. There's the guy who can light it up like this and score 40 points, or, he can throw 5 or 6 picks. When he's only done that a few times compared to he's had a lot of good games. So I think we're starting to get into ridiculousness with people keep saying what's the real Vernon, but he willed it, like you said before. He was playing like Darian Durant in 2013. He willed it. He found his targets. That one play where it looked like he was going to get sacked for sure, and he got out of there and he found, I think it was Hatcher downfield. Like big play came to play. That's all we can really say.
It's a good bet that it was Hatcher, because he had 9 catches, 195 yards, and a touchdown here. I can't tell you that Jake Maier had a bad game. Like, there were
serviceable
two turnovers there, but the biggest problem here is the 5 field goals. That's it.
I was keeping track at I think it was at the end of the first half or just coming up to the first half, where BC and Calgary had the same amount of scoring plays. But Calgary had 1 touchdown and 4 field goals,
right?
And BC had 5 touchdowns. No, 4 touchdowns and 1. Whatever. But when you score 7 instead of 3, you're going to win the game if you consistently do that. Like, René Paredes, probably one of the best kickers ever. Maybe not as good as Louis, but was this his last game? If it was, he went out on a hell of a game for him.
It seems like the past few years it's been like, is this my last game? He's been busy with doing the firefighting thing in Calgary as well. But I think Louis just has this unmatched longevity,
Nobody will be able to beat that.
Playing for as long as he did. And McCallum had some pretty good longevity as well.
Something about that BC life, I guess. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah, maybe. And
Maybe Sean White.
maybe he's going to be the next guy. Like,
Yeah.
there have been, well, you think of McCallum, when he went to BC, I think a lot of people at that point of his career thought maybe he was done.
Yep.
But then he continued to have some of the best and Sean White this year, one of the best kicking seasons in CFL history. I guess maybe kicking in the friendly confines of BC Place doesn't hurt, but they've sure had the luxury of having some great kickers in their history. I think the moment, like in the first quarter when you knew VA was on, 1st and 20 after a holding call. And then he hits Dom Rhymes for 23 yards. And a lot of these were a lot of red and white jerseys in the area, and they couldn't make the plays. So he was throwing them into tight windows and had himself an incredible game. I mean, he had the one passing touchdown. Obviously, well, he had 2 passing touchdowns at the end of the day. He also had himself 3 rushing touchdowns. I think only one of them was one of those goal line plunges. The rest were pretty impressive runs, and I think there were some questions regarding his health. He came in fresh, and he got the job done here. But the Lions, the defense was flying all over the place. They ran into each other, Peters and Hladik. TJ Lee almost got knocked out by one of his own guys. What did you think about Calgary going for the first quarter challenge on a 5-yard play on first down? Now they got it right. So I guess well, at least they won the challenge. So it's nice to have the challenge won. But you mentioned VA in the pocket, evading, a sack. He hits Hatcher, and then he runs it in. So they scored a touchdown on the drive anyway, but quite a big risk to throw the challenge flag in the first quarter on a 5-yard play.
That's just classic Dave Dickenson, though, right? Like he's very sporadic and very, I think, emotional when he challenges plays, and he often does it early and loses. And so I think it was Jock on Twitter who said like the coaches have like a 26% efficiency or something this year for challenges.
Horrible.
Yeah, so that's bad. Like,
well, actually, my wife said they should maybe take away the fishing ones in the fourth quarter and then revisit the stats.
Yeah, maybe
it might be more fair.
Yeah. But he won the challenge, and that's great. But why are you even risking the challenge on a 5-yard play when it's not if I'm a head coach, and maybe this is why I'm not a head coach, but I'm not challenging probably anything in the first quarter unless it's like a scoring play, or if I am going to get the ball at the 1-yard line or something like that, because you just don't know if you're going to need that later in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And he's always been willing to risk it early, but he's there and I'm here, so I guess he's doing something right.
I think the Stamps just couldn't afford to get into a track meet with the Lions, and that's what happened. I think they needed to slow the game down, and kind of make it at least on their side, pound the ball a little bit and just kind of eat clock. And but they kind of dared BC to let's play the track meet by how they handled their first drive, and then it's nice to be up 7-0, but all it really did was light a fire under BC. And Calgary had opportunities after the Lions were up 14-7 after the first quarter. BC gave Calgary a fresh set of downs. They took a roughing the punter penalty. So Calgary's drive extended, but it became all so familiar. It just ended in a field goal there. And they had no answers for Vernon Adams. And I know that they were hyping up the linebackers, Cam Judge, Micah Awe, but they needed to make a play, and they just couldn't do it. It was 21-10 in a hurry, and you're just falling behind, and then they reach into the pocket, and we got to give props to Calgary for this. So many great plays from Vernon Adams, but Bryce Bell, the offensive lineman for the Calgary Stampeders, what a play, getting number 66, the big man, in the open field. Look at those hands on him. Don't tell me he doesn't have good hands, Sheldon.
Linemen have great hands. They just are never given the opportunity.
Yeah.
I remember back when I was playing football, like in grade 9, I got called up there. I was on the junior team, and our season ended, and the high school team had a few more games left. So we went to practice with them, and we were doing a drill, and I got a pass, and I just stretched out for it and caught it and like, holy, you're a lineman, you sure got hands. And I was like, of course I do. But linemen, like, you gotta love a fat guy play. Like, you gotta love it when they and it's very funny how they lined up in that formation, because it's not like he was the third tight end. He was like just in the tackle position, but he was still that tight end, and he obviously recorded himself, and so obviously BC was sleeping there, not listening. But like, hell of a catch. He made a move to deke out a defender, and it's like, oh, it's just too bad it wasn't for a touchdown, because the only thing better than a fat guy play is a fat guy touchdown. But so I liked that a lot. Yes.
Now that drive ended in, you guessed it, another field goal. 2:06 left in the first half. It's 21-13 for the BC Lions. But Sheldon, the end of the first half in the East game, Montreal with the dagger touchdown. The end of the first half in this game, they gave VA the ball with 2 minutes left. He hits Hatcher through a tight window. He's slicing, he's dicing, he's even got anchovies on his pizza. 18 seconds left in. Have you ever had anchovies?
Not knowingly.
Okay. Oh, I guess.
Well, in Caesar salad, I guess, because it's in dressing.
That's what I was
My
just
wife
gonna
was
say.
not a fan when she found that out.
When I worked at Pizza Hut for a summer, and I think somebody only ordered anchovies once. It was like this one can that would get refreshed when the one guy would order it. Really? You're ordering this? But anyway, VA scores a touchdown with 18 seconds to go. It's 28-13. Again, those late touchdowns in a game just absolutely crush a guy.
Yeah, and they got the ball to start the second half too. It's not like Calgary had a chance to just get off to some momentum coming out of the break, because they did again. Like, they just kept going.
Well, I guess Calgary again had a chance.
Yeah.
They forced a fumble on BC's first possession in the second half. I actually thought it was going to be incomplete. I think we've seen a few plays this year where it's kind of a bang. The guy catches the ball, takes a step, drops it. They call it incomplete. But in this case, they ended up calling it a fumble. Gideon Carey gets a big run, but the Stamps again turn it into 3 points.
It's got to be very frustrating for Stamps fans, because that's just so disheartening when you make it's the second time in the game when you get a turnover and you can't you capitalize on points, but not the right points, because then that kind of just gives momentum back to the team that gave up the ball, because they were able to stop it and force a field goal, right? So that's not how you're going to win playoff games.
And it was the second half where we started to see some of those mistakes from the BC Lions defense. They've led the league in defensive penalties over the last several weeks here. And this is something, and I know that the game was in hand, but they can't do this against Winnipeg. They ended up forcing a fumble on Jake Mayer, but BC ended up being offside. So then another field goal for the Calgary Stampeders. So here they're hanging around 28-19 was the score at that point. So clearly they're still in it. But here is another moment. 1st and 20. Vernon Adams Jr. takes off and gets the first down. That Calgary Stampeders defense, I know they have players and I know they've got talent. But on 2 separate instances, when you have them in 1st and 20 and you give up the first down, yeah, you're not going to win that game. And that's what happened here, right? Like, it was brutal.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, like, obviously Calgary is probably expecting them to do a short little dump off throw there, but they didn't protect the middle of the field. And you got to have a guy spying Vernon Adams when you're in that situation. And usually Cam Judge is that guy who's spying the quarterback. And usually it actually works out for them because he had a hell of a season. I don't know how he wasn't an all-star, but that's another story. But it's just, yeah, it's a dagger. That's kind of when I was like, okay, yeah, this game is over. Like, Calgary's not coming back from this.
I thought maybe they had a chance up until about that drive, even though they were sticking around with just the 3s. But again, that 1st and 20 and VA just that's right to the heart. That's, that's garlic in the vampire. That's me and chocolate cake. It's just not gonna. Me and any cake, man. Actually, I'll tell you what. I baked brownies today. And they're always better the next day. So I'm trying to wait. And it's already torture because the recipe says after you put the icing on the top, you have to wait 2 hours for it to set and then you cut it. I'm like, how am I going to wait 2 hours? And then Taylor's saying, well, you got to wait till tomorrow. It's going to be better. I don't know if I can do it, Sheldon.
Well, I'm pretty sure you got to test one tonight to make sure it
maybe
is
I'll
better.
Have one. Maybe I'll have one.
So it'll be 3 then?
Yeah, I'll do one.
You know me too well. Vernon Adams Jr., he ended up having 7 rushes for 54 yards, but the timing of those rushes, 2 of them over 10 yards, 1 over 20, and there was some short yardage stuff bringing the average down a bit. But man, the the timing of those runs, and I think maybe that's his growth as a quarterback. I think a young quarterback will run all the time and take off probably when they didn't need to. But as the quarterback settles down and the defense stops paying attention to that threat of the run, Winnipeg's going to have to be looking for that coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think going back to the previous game, I think Cody's done that as well. He's not the trigger happy runner that he was in his first season as a starter with the Riders. So it's good to see the maturity in those 2 quarterbacks who both of them have faced a lot of adversity, and both of them do have a lot of fans who really do want to see them succeed. So it's good to see both of them winning today.
Scary moment in this game. BC goes up 38-19, and then on the ensuing kickoff, Peyton Logan ends up colliding with a BC Lion, and man, he was knocked out. Jack Hinsberger, number 43 of the BC Lions. It was just one of those things. Special teams is sometimes 6 car wrecks going on at once, and it's probably the most dangerous play in almost all of sports. Those plays on a football field. And both guys ended up being down for, 5 to 10 minutes, but both walked off the field, dude. Yeah. That makes you feel good. I mean, hopefully both guys are okay going forward, and there's no, serious long-term injuries and effects here. But man, that was hard to watch.
Well, yeah, and when you see a player down for that long, you don't expect them to get up, and you expect them to get carted off, maybe give the thumbs up to show that everything's okay. So obviously the training staff must have tested, must have figured out that there was no no loss of mobility or anything like that. Like they had sensation everywhere. Because if there was even a chance that there was a neck injury there, they wouldn't, or a spinal injury, I mean, they wouldn't have let them get up. So that's definitely promising. But you see the NFL, they're taking away the kickoff basically by, 98% of the kickoffs are touchbacks. So I wonder if something like this might do something similar up here. Not certain. I do like kickoff returns. It's very, especially on the wider field, it's, kick returns are exciting to watch, but at, we got to be looking out for player safety. And
Yeah, from what I understand, and I don't understand, or I couldn't repeat all the science to you, but the angles on a CFL field kind of prevent a lot of these collisions like
okay,
this.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
So we don't see it as often, but I
yeah,
think the special teams part of our game is what separates us from anyone else. So yeah, you got to be safe. You're right. It kind of just looked like they
yeah.
both had their
Yeah,
heads down kind of
yeah.
thing, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not saying they should change it. I'm just
Right.
saying, like, I
Of
wonder
course. Of
if
course.
if this does happen again,
Yeah.
and if it
Yeah.
happens frequently, then they might have to look at it. But I we're just all glad that they got up and they seem to
Exactly.
be okay. So
Exactly.
hopefully never have that again, because you never want to see. And imagine if the players were getting carted off or something like it. Just imagine the teams having to play after something like that.
Yeah.
Like the Damar Hamlin incident in Buffalo and stuff like that. Like tough. So I'm sure it was a big sigh of relief for all of the players and everyone involved that they could go back out there and realize that their guys were okay.
I think the
Ish.
fact that they both got up, the players are like, all right, let's
Yeah.
go.
Well, yeah, because you saw like all the BC guys were all cuddled together and like
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
prayer and stuff, and so I'm like, oh man, like this. And then you hear clapping, and he got up, and we're like, and they looked rough, like they looked
They
like
did. They
they
did.
they definitely both got their bells rung. You could tell when they were walking off that they were looking very confused.
Yeah.
But luckily, no permanent damage. Hopefully,
It's
we'll
funny
say.
because Taylor said it was kind of a contrast. The end of the Montreal Hamilton game, the players are throwing fists. In this game, I know it wasn't the end of the game, but everybody's
Yeah,
kind of uniting. Everybody wants to be safe
yeah,
on the football field. So I mean, after that, ended up getting into third down territory for the Stampeders, and they take a procedure on 3rd and 4. I actually thought that maybe should have went BC's way. It was so close.
it was like frame by frame, and you could tell that Al Bradbury wanted to get it right. You could tell.
Like it could have been first down. I mean, it would have
Yeah,
been still a 19-point spread at that
yeah.
time, but BC takes over after the turnover on downs there. They kick a field goal. It's 41-19, and then we start Calgary 3rd and 21. They hit Cole Tucker for the touchdown, and there's a holding call. See, there's some opportunities and some plays that Calgary left on the field here. I'm not, it probably wouldn't have been a different result here, but it's just another one of those things where they had to settle for a field goal again. And then they ended up getting a garbage time touchdown at the end of the game. They drove 101 yards. BC took a roughing the passer and illegal contact. I don't want to read too much into it, but the penalties started to come into play. It's just like Calgary wasn't good enough to take advantage of those plays and be a magical Dustin Crumback from earlier in the season. And BC just overmatched them in pretty much every single way, really. It was wild to watch. And hey, we got to point out, and they pointed him out on the broadcast over and over again, Josh Woods, number 2, the BC Lions. He had 11 tackles, 3 of them for a loss, added a knockdown as well. What a monstrous game that he had in this one. They only ended up having 1 sack. It was from David Menard, and there was only 1 sack from the Stamps, and that was Cam Judge on Vernon Adams Jr. So there it is, man. We got the same Final Four as last year. BC's going to Winnipeg with a different quarterback than last November. Montreal's going to Toronto with a different quarterback for both teams than last November as well. But what does this mean for the Calgary Stampeders going forward? Danny Austin made quite the tweet today saying that I think it was BC ended up spending $300,000 on players on the injured list throughout the season. Calgary's expenses were $1 million. Now, not only is that tough to overcome on a football field standpoint, that's tough to overcome in the accounting books. Like, that's a lot to deal with, man.
It'd be interesting to see what some of the other teams are, because you got to think like Hamilton, Bo is on there for 12 weeks. So that's depending on, like, I know his signing bonus wouldn't count to that, but that's probably a couple $100,000 just in him.
Yeah.
Trevor Harris was on there for 12 weeks as well in Saskatchewan. Masoli was in Ottawa. So it'll be interesting to see if even if Danny could tweet out the other teams, or Third Down or somebody can do it, because it'd be very interesting to see if that's if they're that much worse for the injuries as everyone else. And
well, I guess I think that might speak to the volume of their injuries, because I don't know if they had any guys getting paid close to that much. Their quarterback played all 12 games, so or 18, sorry. 18.
Yeah, no, that's also true. Yeah, I know people release like the man games that miss due to injury and stuff like that. So it'd be interesting to check out that too.
Is Dave going to be doing the dual job in 2024? There's some rumblings about it. I think he still will be, but
I kind of hope so. Like I like the CFL with Dave Dickenson as a head coach. Like
I do too.
Like he's just one of those guys, and I said this to a friend earlier, to like when you watched his pregame speech that they showed on TSN compared to the speech that his brother did the week previous or 2 weeks previous, like it just showed the contrast between their two styles, I guess. But like I like having a coach that's passionate and he's good for the league. I just don't know if both roles if that it weighed too much on him, maybe, or if he didn't have enough time to do as much coaching as he normally would. I worry if he leaves the booth or leaves the field and just goes up to GM, and so would Killam would probably take over there, and I guess that seems to be the plan. But I don't know, man. I just for entertainment value and for the good of the league, I hope that Dickenson continues to coach for years to come.
Yeah, I love having guys like O'Shea and Dickenson on the sideline. That's
like we missed the Wally Buonos and the Don Matthews and like all those guys who like were just so tenured, and they love football, and you love seeing them love football, and it's just, I don't know. Some of these newer coaches aren't working out as much as we thought. Like Claybrooks in BC didn't work out. He was the fancy hire back then, right? And but then you do see some like Dinwiddie who are working out. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Well, the division finals are upon us, and there were no upsets this week. There were no covered spreads this week by either team.
I was 2-0. Just y'all were 1-1. Just saying.
Yeah, I was 1-1. I almost want to pick Montreal, BC here. Maybe it's just what I'm cheering for. I don't know, but I just, those Argos, man, they haven't played a meaningful game since like last November.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But they've
that'd
been
bite 'em.
playing like they've been meaningful
Yeah.
games though still. So
Yeah. I just, yeah. And hey, if you watch I watch their videos a lot, like on TikTok and Twitter and stuff like that. And I don't know if you saw at the end of that Toronto game, the end of the year when they beat Ottawa, they were trying to Gatorade Dinwiddie and he kept avoiding it. But they gave him the belt in the locker room and he's dancing around with the players. And I think they got the Gatorade shower on him in the locker room. They just seem like a really tight-knit team. And when that happens, they become pretty difficult to defeat. But we'll talk about all that coming up this week, the West and East Final. Thanks for joining us to talk about semifinal weekend. Thanks for being here, Sheldon. I appreciate that.
always.
Is that a Bon Jovi song? I think it is.
It's probably one of the
Sounds
most
like it could be.
popular song titles of all time, probably.
Probably. You can rate, review, and subscribe to Two and Out on your favorite podcatcher. And hey, like and comment on YouTube as well. As always, for the algorithm, baby. For the algorithm. We'll talk
even
to
if you think you're in my head, keep commenting.
Yeah.
I just like to shout out our viewers, okay?
We'll talk to you soon to get you ready for the division finals. Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.